70 years ago, before leaving his body, Bhagavan said, "Where can I go? I'm always here." That we can understand that in two ways. One is that Bhagavan is ever present in Tiruvannamalai as Arunachala, because Bhagavan and Arunachala are one and the same. So physically, Bhagavan is always present, always available to us in Tiruvannamalai in the form of Arunachala. Spiritually, Bhagavan is ever shining in the heart of each one of us as I, because Bhagavan is our own true nature. Bhagavan is Atma Swarupa. Bhagavan and Arunachala are inseparable from ourselves. We can never be Iniya Viduva. How can we leave Bhagavan? Because Bhagavan is our own self. So Bhagavan is ever present, always in our heart, shining as I. And what all that Bhagavan sang in Aksharamlai and the other hymns of Stuti Panchakam about Arunachala all applies equally well to him. Whatever he said about Arunachala is equally true of him, because he himself is Arunachala. So, for example, he sang Ambu Vilalipol, Amburu Vunilene, Anbai Karitarul Arunachala. He refers to Arunachala there as Amburu. That is, Arunachala is Ambu Swarupam, the very form of love, the very nature of love. And Bhagavan is that. So Bhagavan, the spiritual path that Bhagavan taught us is all about love. The goal is love and the path is love. What Bhagavan taught us is the path of bhakti in the very deepest sense. Bhakti, very different stages of bhakti. At the very most basic level, people pray to God for fulfilling their desires and protecting them and all these things. That though that is a form of bhakti, it's not real bhakti, because for such people, God is a means to an end. They love God because of what they can get from God. They're not loving God for his own sake. As the devotion matures, we come to understand that in one song, Sadhuam sang, Kodu Tavam Perida, Inda Kodu Porul Perida, which is greater, the giver or the things given. So slowly as our bhakti matures, we come to understand that if God is so gracious to give us what we ask for, is not he the giver greater than the gifts he gives us? So slowly, our devotion matures from devotion for the things we think we can get from God to love for God himself. And then love is constantly, as we progress along the path of bhakti, our love is constantly getting more and more refined. But if we truly love someone, whether we're talking about love for God, or also even we can understand it in human relationships, if we truly love a person, a true love is not about what we can get from the person we love, but what we can give to that person. If we truly love someone, we won't be having expectations, what this person can do for me. We'll be thinking about what we can do for them. And the greatest gift we can give is to give ourselves. So in the path of bhakti, the pinnacle of the path of bhakti is surrender, self-surrender, giving ourselves to God. And the self-surrender, just like the path of bhakti goes through different stages, the path of surrender, there are various different stages. At the beginning, we try to surrender our will to the will of God. Ninishtam enishtam, as Bhagavan says, your will is my will. thy will be done. We understand, but our desires, our attachments, our likes and dislikes, our hopes and fears, these are what draws our mind away from God. So we want to give up all our own likes and dislikes, all our own desires and attachments, to surrender our will to the will of God. But we can, the very nature of ego is, now we are, it is as ego, but we are following this path of bhakti. The very nature of ourself as ego is to be attached. As Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Urudunapadu, Urupatri undam, Urupatri nikkum, Urupatri undu mikahongam. That's Urupatri undam, means grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikkum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mikahongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. Uruvictu urupatram, leaving one form, it grasps another form. Tedinal autum pidicum, if sought, it takes flight. Uruvatra peyahande, such is the nature of this formless phantom ego. So the very nature of ego is grasping, patri. So attachment is the very nature of ourself as ego. So long as we exist as ego, we cannot be completely free of desires and attachments. We cannot be completely free of likes and dislikes. So in order to, though we can, by the path of devotion, that's by the path of Anya Bhakti, that is taking God to be other than ourselves, we can, to a certain extent, we can reduce the strength of our desires and attachments. But we cannot completely free ourselves from all desires and attachments, so long as we exist as ego. In order to free ourselves completely from desires and attachments, we need to cut the root of desire and attachment. The root of desire and attachment is ourself as ego, because it's only as ego that we have desires and attachments. In sleep, we don't rise as ego, therefore we have no likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, anything. We're perfectly happy in sleep. It's only when we rise as ego in waking and dream, but we feel we have so many needs and we want this, we want that, and our needs continue multiplying, and all these desires and attachments come along with ego. So the root of all desires and attachments is ego. In order to be completely free of desires and attachment, we have to eradicate ego. That is why the path of surrender begins with surrendering our will. But ultimately, it comes to self-surrender. We have to surrender ourself. That means surrender ourself as ego. So, as I said, the pinnacle of the path of devotion is surrender. The pinnacle of the path of surrender is self-surrender. But how to surrender ourselves? Bhagavan has made it clear. So long as our attention is facing outwards, attending to anything other than ourselves. In other words, so long as we're grasping form, grasping anything other than ourselves, we are thereby feeding ego. If we want to be free of ego, there's only one way. Tedinal autum pidicum. If it's sought, it takes flight. That is the nature of ego, of ourself as ego. We rise as ego by attending to things other than ourselves. And so long as we continue attending to things other than ourselves, we are thereby feeding and nourishing this ego, sustaining ego. If we want to get rid of ego, we have to turn back to face ourselves. Why? Because ego doesn't actually exist. Ego seems to exist so long as we're looking elsewhere, so long as we're looking at things other than ourselves. If we look at ourselves, there's no such thing to be found. Bhagavan gave the example of the Mapare Torum, the bridegroom's friend, this imposter who came into a wedding and pretended both to be to the bridegroom's party, he pretended to belong to the bride's party, and to the bride's party, he pretended to belong to the bridegroom's party. He didn't actually belong to either of them. Likewise, ego doesn't belong either to the body, which it claims as I, nor does it belong to, nor does it claims not only the body as I, it also claims the awareness. It doesn't belong to either. It's neither Sat-Chit, nor is it the body. The body is Jada, as Bhagavan says in verse 24 of Ārādhana. Sat-Chit doesn't rise. But between the two, this spurious entity called I rises. This is ego. So ego is neither this nor that. When Bhagavan says it's Uruvatra Peyahande, when he says Uruvatra, he means it has no form of its own. It cannot exist without grasping the form of the body as I, but that is not its own form. That's why it needs to grasp a form in order to seem to exist. That is why he says it's Uruvatra. It has no form of its own. He also says it's a pay, a ghost, a phantom. What that signifies is it has got no substance of its own. The substance, the only real substance is Sat-Chit. It borrows it borrows the awareness from Sat-Chit, which gives it a seeming substance. It borrows the form from body, so it seems to have both form and substance, but it doesn't have either. So we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking away from ourselves. When we look back at ourselves, there's no such thing to be found. So it is only by investigating ourselves that we can surrender ourselves, that we can free ourselves from this ego. So just as the pinnacle of the path of devotion is surrender, the pinnacle of the path of surrender is self-surrender, and self-surrender cannot be achieved without self-investigation, Atma-vichara. Bhagavan makes that very clear in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. But before I come to that, I just want to say one other thing. The very first teaching Bhagavan gave in words, as far as we know, is the note that he wrote for his mother in December 1898. That note it's what he said there in a way is very simple, but it is very, very deep in meaning. And what Bhagavan is teaching there basically is the path of surrender. What he says in the first sentence, Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu atavipan. Avarava means they, but in this context it's using in the sense of a there, in sense of possessive, as a possessive form, though he uses the nominative form. So avarava prarabdha, according to prarabdha prakaram, according to the prarabdha of each person, adakanavan. Adakanavan is a very nice word, but word Bhagavan has coined. Literally it means he who is for that. He's referring indirectly to God or Guru, who is the one who ordains the fruit of action. So adakanavan, angangirindu. Angangirindu means being there, or being in each place. What that implies is he's in the heart of each one of us. God is shining in the heart of each one of us as I. Angangirindu atavipan. Atavipan literally means he'll make them dance. What Bhagavan means by this is what the prarabdha that is ordained for us, we have to experience that. Or this body, mind, and speech have to undergo those experiences which are ordained in prarabdha. That cannot be avoided. But in order for us to experience our prarabdha, we need to do certain actions. For example, if it's our destiny, say, to become a doctor, in order to become a doctor, we have to study. We have to go past so many exams and everything. So there's so many actions that we need to do in order to qualify as a doctor. So because it's our prarabdha to be a doctor, we have to go through those actions. So like that, so many things we experience in life. In order for us to experience those things, we have to do certain actions. We means not actually we, but this body, speech, and mind have to do certain actions. So this body, speech, and mind will be made to do those actions that are necessary in order for us to experience our prarabdha. that doesn't mean that all the actions we do by body, speech, and mind are according to prarabdha. Because if everything was according to prarabdha, then there would be no agamya. Prarabdha is the fruit of agamya performed in past lives. So body, speech, and mind are driven by two forces. They're driven by prarabdha. We have to do those actions which are necessary in order for us to experience our prarabdha, but at the same time, our will is constantly interfering. We experience something nice, we want more of it. We experience something unpleasant, we want to avoid it. So our will is constantly interfering. That was the first sentence. In the second sentence, Bhagavan says, Endrum naduvadadu, enrichikanum naduvadu. That means what will never happen will not happen, whatever effort, whatever that implies, whatever effort we make to make it happen. So from this we have to understand what is going to happen is going to happen. We cannot change what we are destined to experience, but we are free to want to change it, and we're free to try to change it. That's why Bhagavan says here, enrichikanum. That means whatever effort we make, however much we try to change, we try to experience what is never to happen, it will not happen. So we are free to want to experience things that we're not destined to experience. We're free to try to experience them, but we are not free to experience them, because we can only experience what we are destined to experience. And in the next sentence, he says, the other side of the same coin, nadapadu entade seinum niladu. What will happen will not stop whatever obstacle is made. So we can try our best to avoid whatever we're destined to experience. We can want to avoid it, we can try to avoid it, but we cannot avoid it. It is to be experienced. And then in the next sentence he says, iduve tinnam, this is certain. So Bhagavan is saying, what we are destined to experience, we will certainly be experienced. And we'll also be made to do whatever actions are necessary to experience that. Why Bhagavan said this, the context in which Bhagavan said this, his mother had come from Madurai. For the first time since he had left, she had come to see him. And naturally, as a mother, she was very sad to see her son living a life of what outwardly appeared like a life of austere tapas. So she wanted him to come back home. And she said, you come back home, if you want to do your meditation or whatever you want to do, you can do it at home, but at least let me feed you and take care of you. But Bhagavan wrote this to say, what is destined to happen is already destined. We will all be made to act according to whatever is destined to happen. So things cannot change. That's what the context in which he wrote this. So he said, as I say, he said, iduve tinnam, this is certain. What is certain? It's certain that we will, whatever is not will not happen. That means what, when he says endrum nadavaddu, that means what is not destined to happen. That's the implication. It literally means what will not happen, or what will never happen. But the implication is what is destined not to happen will not happen in spite of whatever effort we make. What is destined to happen will not stop whatever obstacle we make. This is certain. Then he concludes by saying, Ahalin monamai irake nandru. Therefore, monomai irake we can take either as silently being or being silent. Nandru is good. So being silent is good. What does he mean by being silent? Obviously, it obviously doesn't mean that we have to remain without any action of mind, speech, or body, because he's already said in the first sentence, whatever actions we are destined to do in order to experience our prarabdha, will be made to do those actions. So if it's our destiny to, for example, to be a family person, to work in an office and to earn money to take care of our family, we'll be made to do that. So being silent isn't about not doing outward actions. Being silent means not rising as ego. Because as soon as we rise as ego, take this body, why we feel I am doing this. I am working, I am supporting my family, I am doing this, I need to study more in order to get better qualifications, in order to improve the circumstances of my family, all these things. It's because we take this body, speech, and mind as ourself. They are not what we actually are, but when we rise as ego, we grasp them as ourself. So taking this body to be I, we identify ourselves with the actions of the body, speech, and mind. So mona mai irake doesn't mean the body, speech, and mind shouldn't act. It means we shouldn't identify ourselves with them and feel I am doing this. So mona mai irake is the state in which ego doesn't rise. In Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan defines what is monam, what he means by monam. He says in the 6th paragraph, he says, Nānenam ninebu kinjitum ila idame surupamahum aduve monam enapadam. So what Bhagavan means by mona, okay, the first sentence, Nānenam ninebu kinjitum ila idame surupamahum literally means the place in which there's not even the slightest, the ego doesn't exist even to the slightest extent. Ego means, what the term he uses is nānenam ninebu. That literally means the thought called I. That is ego. The state, and idam literally means place, but Bhagavan uses place often in a metaphorical sense. So we can take it in this context to mean state. The state in which the ego doesn't exist even to the slightest extent is sarupam. Sarupam means our own real nature. Aduve mona menapadam. That alone is what is called mona. So what Bhagavan means by mona is our own real nature, which is the state in which there's not even the slightest rising of any ego. So when he says mona mai irake nandru, he means we shouldn't rise as ego. So what Bhagavan wrote in this note for his mother, it has a very, very deep meaning. And he, in this note, when he says mona mai irake nandru, what he's implying is we should cease rising as ego. That is, we should surrender ourselves completely. But how to surrender ourselves? This is what he taught. This is what he explained to Shiv Prashan Pillai. When Shiv Prashan Pillai recorded Bhagavan's answers in a question and answer form, and Bhagavan later rewrote it in the form of an essay. So in the 13th paragraph of the essay is the paragraph which is focused particularly on self-surrender. And in the very first sentence of this paragraph, he explains what self-surrender actually is. How can we surrender ourselves to God? What he says is, Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambarataku, satram idam kodamo. That means not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought or any other thought except Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana literally means thought of oneself, but in this context, it implies self-attentiveness. So in other words, not attending to anything other than ourselves is what he means by not giving, because when we attend to something else, that is everything, as Bhagavan says, as he says in the 4th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, the world is nothing but if you remove all thoughts, there's no such thing as world. And he says at the end of the 14th paragraph, Jagamen Badu Nineve, but what is called world is nothing but thought. So according to Bhagavan, all phenomena are nothing but thoughts. So thinking of anything other than ourselves is a thought. Sorry, attending to anything other than ourselves is a thought, because all other things are just thoughts. So Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambaraku satram idam kadamo, means not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than thought of oneself, other than self-attentiveness. Atmanishta paranai irupade, being as one who is firmly established as oneself. He said irupade, being that alone is tanne isanaku alipadam. That alone is giving oneself to God. So how can we surrender ourselves? It's only by attending to ourselves, by giving no room to the rising of any thought other than self-attentiveness. That is, so here in this sentence, Bhagavan makes it very clear that ultimately we can surrender ourselves only by means of Atma-vichara, self-investigation. Often Bhagavan used to say to people, there are two ways, either investigate yourself or surrender yourself. Self-investigation or self-surrender, Atma-vichara or Atma-samapanam. Bhagavan sometimes used to say, as if these are two different paths. Sadhu Om used to say about this is like a father or grandfather playing with children, saying, which coin do you want? Do you want the one with the flower on it or the one with the head on it? If one child says, I want the one with the head on it, the grandfather will turn over the head side and give that coin. And if another child says, I want the flower, he'll turn over the same coin and give the other one. So Bhagavan presented this one path of self-investigation and self-surrender as if they were two different paths. But actually, if we try to follow either of them, we cannot investigate ourselves without surrendering ourselves. We cannot surrender ourselves without investigating ourselves. They're one and the same path. As we will find, if we try to go deep into either of them, we'll find they are one and the same path. And as he makes very clear in this sentence. So in this sentence, he says, we shouldn't give the slightest room to the rising of any other thought. But there's so many important things for us to think about. We've got our family, we've got to pay the mortgage, we've got to pay the bills, we've got to take care of our family. We think there's so many things that we need to take care of. So in the rest of this paragraph, Bhagavan explains why we don't actually have to think of anything. He says, in the next sentence, he says, Isan peril evelo barate potalum avalaveyum ava vahitu kolukera. That means even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. That means we can, even the burden of thinking, we can surrender that burden to God, because he's going to make us, whatever actions this body, speech, and mind are going to have to do according to Prarabdha, he will make us act. So we can surrender the whole burden of him. We don't have to think about whether we should do this, whether we should do that, whether I should apply for a better job, whether I should do this course to improve my qualifications, whether I should plan in this way or plan in that way, what I should do. It's already decided. He's going to, what we are going to do, it's already, what we're going to experience is already decided, and what we need to do in order to experience that is already decided. So even the burden of thinking, we can surrender that burden to God. He will take care of it perfectly, much better than we can. And then he says in the next sentence, Sakala Karan Galayum Oru Parameshwara Shakti Nadati Kondiru Kirapadiyal Namum Adaku Adangi Iramal Ipadi Sevendum Endru Sada Chinte Padu Ain. That means, since one Parameshwara Shakti means one supreme ruling power, one power of God. That it's a way of describing God's power. Since that one power is driving all karyas. Karyas means whatever needs to be done, whatever ought to be done, whatever is to happen, all is being driven by that one Parameshwara Shakti. So since that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, instead of we also yielding to it, why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? We're spending all our life thinking, should I do this, should I do that, it's necessary to do this, or is it better to do that? We don't have to think of any of these things. Leave it all to God. He will bear the whole burden. And then to illustrate this, he gives a beautiful analogy in the final sentence. Though we know that what he says in Tamil is, Puhai Vandi Sakala Barangalayum Tangi Kondu Povadu Terindirundum Adil Eri Kondu Pohum Nam Nabodea Sireya Muteyum Adil Potu Vitu Sukumai Iramal Ade Namadu Talayil Tangi Kondu Ein Kashtapada Vendum. So beautifully, Bhagavan expresses this. Though we know that the train is bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily, he says, sukumai, happily leaving our small luggage placed on it, that means placed on the train, why should we, instead of doing so, why should we suffer bearing it on our head, bearing the luggage on our head? He uses two words here. He says, describing putting the luggage aside, he says, sukamai iramal. Instead of being of happily remaining, leaving the luggage aside, why should we kashtapadavendam? Why should we suffer carrying it on our head? So if the path of surrender that Bhagavan has taught us is actually the happiest path of all, because the more we surrender our burden to God, the more carefree our life will be, the easier our life will be. If we think, supposing Bhagavan hadn't come into our life, supposing we didn't know about his teachings, how worried will we be now about what's happening in the world with this coronavirus? But because, and this is just one example, but I mean, if we just think of our life, how would our life be without Bhagavan and his teachings? It's unbearable to think of it. Bhagavan's teaching, just merely understanding Bhagavan's teachings and even trying a little bit to put it into practice, relieves us from so much burden. Our life is so much easier just because we have, by his immense grace, he has brought us to his path. He's brought us, means he's attracted us to his path. He's attracted us to his teachings. He's enabled us to understand, because his teachings are so simple, actually extremely simple. There cannot be simpler teaching than what Bhagavan has taught us. But why people find it difficult to understand Bhagavan? Because of our lack of willingness to accept the absolute simplicity that he's taught us. For example, he says in verse 26 of Ulludunapadu, Ahandayundayan anatumundahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahandayin indra. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahandaya yavamam. Ego itself is everything. Ahalin Adalal Yaduidu Endru Nadale Overdal Yavam and all. Therefore, know that investigating what it is giving up everything. So simple is the basic principles of Bhagavan's teachings. We rise as ego by grasping other things, but those other things don't exist unless we rise as ego. So it's only when we rise as ego, everything seems to come into existence. When we start dreaming, the whole dream world comes into existence. When we stop dreaming, the whole dream world disappears. So everything comes into existence only when we rise as ego. And when we don't rise as ego, there's nothing. There's only just Anadi Ananta Kanda Satchidananda, as Bhagavan describes it in Upadesha verse 28. So Bhagavan's teachings are so simple, but we must be willing to accept them. And if we are willing to accept them, why are we willing to accept them? It's only by his grace. he has somehow drawn us to his teachings, and he's made us feel so attracted to his teachings, and by attracting us to his teachings, he has taken so much burden off our shoulders, and he has taught us this path, which is a path of happiness. The more we surrender, the happier, the more carefree we will be. So what we all want, what we're all seeking, is to be happy and carefree. We don't become happy and carefree by accumulating more and more wealth or any of these things. We become happy and carefree only by surrendering all our desires and attachments, our likes and dislikes, and along with their root, the ego. To the extent that we surrender ourselves to Bhagavan, to that extent we will be happy. So how can we say how fortunate we are to have been brought to Bhagavan's path? And words fail when we try to think of his grace. His grace is beyond we cannot, words fail us when we try to describe it, thoughts fail us when we try to think of his grace. So therefore we just have to keep quiet. That is really appreciating the grace that he has given us, that he is ever showering upon us. So if there's time, if anyone would like to ask any questions.
So thanks a lot, Michael. So should we do the questions now?
Yeah, yes, if that suits everyone. If anyone has any questions.
Many questions.
First of all, thanks a lot. We also feel super fortunate. So
I'll
just go and
fortunate because we come to Bhagavan. Everything comes only from Bhagavan.
Sampurva Janma Punyam. Okay, so I'll just go through the questions in the order.
Janma Punyam. His grace is Karana Milada Karane. It has no cause. It's not because of our punya. Sadhuam used to. Sadhuam, do you know what is the qualification to be a devotee of Bhagavan? Sadhuam gave a very nice analogy. If you go to the greatest doctor in the world, if you go and wait in the surgery of the greatest doctor of the world, what type of patients will you find there? You won't find patients with cold and minor illnesses. You'll only find patients who have diseases that no other doctor can cure. Only the most hopeless cases need to go to the greatest doctor in the world. So Bhagavan is the greatest doctor in the world. Why he has chosen us? Because we are the most hopeless cases. Knowing that we cannot be saved by anyone else, he has taken us under his wing. So it's not because of our punya, it's because we are so worthless that he has taken us.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so there were questions on the heart center. So I'll just summarize, meaning the significance of the heart center. So the gist of the questions is it fair to say that until one has some experience, however vague, of the heart center, one cannot fully understand Bhagavan's teachings?
The word heart means center. What is the center? The center is I. Heart means I. For people who were not able who were unwilling to accept the simplicity of Bhagavan's teachings, people whose minds were steeped in yogic ideas, when such people persisted in asking Bhagavan where in the body is heart, he did sometimes point out that relative to the body, 2 digits to right from the center of the chest, that is the center. But that's not the real heart. The real heart is not a physical location. It has neither inside nor outside. It is the infinite whole. Heart is just another name for our own real nature. What we actually are, a pure awareness that we actually are, that is heart. We are always aware of the heart as I am. The problem is now, instead of being aware of just I am, we are aware of I am plus adjuncts. We are aware of I am this body, I am Michael, I am so-and-so, I have lived for so many years, I've got such and such a history. We add so many things to this I. If we experience the I just on its own, that is the pure awareness, that is the heart. That is what we are all seeking. The more we turn our attention within, the closer we come to dissolving in the heart, which is that pure awareness. So that is the real meaning of heart or heart center.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the next, both related to making progress. So the first is, what are the signs that we are making progress and that we are the recipient of Bhagavan's grace? And then related, is there a dramatic point in a spiritual seeker's life when he or she gets a glimpse of the self all of a sudden? Or is spiritual awakening just a gradual process?
Sorry, what was the first question?
Yeah, so the first question was, what are the signs that we are making progress and that we're receiving?
Yeah, Bhagavan said, the only real sign of progress is perseverance. That is what you mean by perseverance, perseverance in the practice of self-investigation and self-surrender. Why is that the only sign? Because to the extent that we truly love to surrender ourselves, to that extent we will persevere in the practice. So, but to the extent that we are persevering in the practice, to that extent we can say that we are making progress. About the spiritual path is not about experience. It's not about the real spiritual path is not about any dramatic experience. What we are investigating is to know, we are trying to know the truth of the experiencer. So we are not seeking any experience. We simply want to know what we actually are. So during the course of sadhana, while practicing self-investigation and self-surrender, slowly, the more we practice self-investigation and self-surrender, the more our Vishaya vasanas, that the inclinations that draw us outwards to attend to Vishaya, to phenomena, to things other than ourselves, the more they will reduce in strength, and the more our bhakti and vairagya will increase in strength. But this is not something that we can very easily measure, because the more we have bhakti and vairagya, the more clearly we'll be aware of all our shortcomings, of how strong our Vishaya vasanas still are. So we cannot easily measure our progress, but slowly, as we persevere in this path, our Vishaya vasanas will be slowly dropping off, and our bhakti and vairagya will be slowly increasing. Not that this is something that we can easily measure. This is a gradual process, but we finally reach a stage. Either there's no midway between ego and our real nature. Either we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, or we're aware of ourselves as something other than we actually are. So long as we're aware of ourselves as anything other than what we actually are, that is ego. That is now we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. That is ego. So the only way to get rid of ego, because ego is a wrong awareness of ourselves. It's an erroneous awareness of ourselves. Instead of being aware of ourselves just as I am I, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. So the only way to get rid of ego is to know ourselves as we actually are. When we know ourselves as we actually are, ego is finished. So there will be a point at which we finally manage to let go of everything else and turn our attention fully towards ourselves. At that moment, we'll experience ourselves as we really are. Ego will be finished. But that's not actually a dramatic happening, because when it happens, it's just like if we mistake a rope to be a snake, the only way of killing that snake is to look at it very carefully and see that actually it's only a rope. When we see it's only a rope, it's not anything dramatic. Oh, unnecessarily I was fearing it, it's just a rope. So when the truth dawns, when our real nature becomes clear to us, it's not a big dramatic happening. In fact, it's no happening at all, because the ego simply slips away. And when the ego slips away and we see what we actually are, we see that we were always that. So since we were always that, it's not anything that had actually happened. So it seems to be a happening from the perspective of ego, but when it actually happens, it's no happening at all. That's why Bhagavan said there's no way, a time will come when you will laugh at yourself. Obviously, we won't literally laugh at ourselves, because then we'll be pure awareness. Pure awareness doesn't laugh. But metaphorically speaking, Bhagavan said, a time will come when you will laugh at all the effort you made to attain what was already yours, what you always actually are. So during there is a gradual progress, the spiritual journey. We're slowly returning to our source. But when we reach our source, we will find we were already there. We were already that. It's nothing new. So we're not looking for any dramatic experience. All we want is to know, who am I? What we will be when we know who am I is what we are even now. So it's nothing. Bhagavan said, if jnana were a new experience, whatever is new whatever comes will go. So if it were a new experience, we'd lose it one day. But jnana is ever present. Mukti, we are ever liberated. That's why Bhagavan said, true liberation is beyond bandha mukti. It's beyond that duality of bondage and liberation. But only if we are bound, we can be liberated. But since we were never bound, because we are ever liberated, there's no such thing as liberation. I mean, liberation seems to be a goal, so long as we rise as ego. When we actually attain liberation, we will find that we were ever liberated. We had never actually risen as ego. But we don't have to worry about when we're going to reach the goal or anything like that. As Bhagavan makes clear in this last sentence of the 13th paragraph of Who Am I, if we surrender ourselves, our life will be happy. The more we surrender, the happier we'll be. When we surrender completely, we'll be completely happy. So all we have to be concerned about now is surrendering ourselves to Bhagavan. Let the liberation be next minute, or let it be 1,000 Janmas away. What does it matter? Our only concern is we have to surrender ourselves to Bhagavan. Let him take care of everything. Let him worry about our bondage or liberation. That's not our concern. Put the whole burden on him. Travel happily in the train.
Thank you. So next one is...
But he said, in the previous paragraph, the 12th paragraph, he said, he gives the analogy of the prey in the jaws of the tiger. He says, God and Guru in truth are not different. Just as what has been caught in the jaws of a tiger will not return, that means will not escape, so those who have been caught in the look of Guru's grace will never be forsaken, but will surely be saved by him. But he ends that paragraph saying, Eninum Guru Katya Varipadi Tavarada Nadika Vendam. Nevertheless, it is necessary to walk unfailingly in accordance with the path that Guru has shown. So we have to be seriously following the path of self-investigation and self-surrender that Bhagavan has taught us. Then only we can sit back and that is putting our luggage aside, and then we'll be happy. If we are not actually following his path, we're still carrying the burden on our head, we'll be suffering. So the measure of the extent to which we're following Bhagavan's path, the extent to which we are carefree, but the extent to which we are happy, that is the sign that we are truly following his path.
Thank you. So the next one is there any personal upadesha that you received from Sri Sadhu Om or anyone else that you're grateful for and that you wish to share with us?
if I want to say in one word, very briefly, what I gained from Sadhu Om, he taught me to love Bhagavan, and that is the greatest gift he could have given me. All we need is to, I mean, I can't say my love for Bhagavan is still very imperfect, but at least I learned a little bit of how to love Bhagavan. I mean, Sadhu Om had so much love for Bhagavan, and that love was infectious. So I caught that infection, and I can't escape it. So yeah, he taught me love for Bhagavan and Bhagavan's teachings. But there's nothing that. But when people ask Bhagavan, is there any special Upadesha? But that is not written in all the books. Bhagavan said, here it's all an open secret. There are no secrets. There's no special Upadesha to be given. The Upadesha is investigate yourself and thereby surrender yourself. That's the whole of Bhagavan's teachings. There's nothing more to add to that. Nothing, there's no superior teaching. There's no teaching that can be superior to that.
Thank you. Next one. What are the spiritual benefits of living in Tiruvannamalai? Do you miss the physical proximity of the hill?
We are all living in Tiruvannamalai, even now. Though we seem to be physically far away, Arunachala is ever shining in our heart as I. So we are never actually away. But there is definite benefit in living in Tiruvannamalai, but Bhagavan knows what medicine we need when. So, for example, in my case, I was fortunate to live 20 years there, and I was able to go around Arunachala almost every day. That definitely is a great benefit to be, but Bhagavan knows what we need when we need it. I thought during most of the 20 years I lived there, I was expecting to live my whole life there. But Bhagavan, my prarabdha was different. Bhagavan took me away. When I first left, when I was first away from Arunachala, I missed very much the going around the hill and being there and being able to visit Bhagavan's sanity and everything. But now, of course, if I have the opportunity, I'd love to return, but I never really feel far away because Bhagavan's teachings are always, Bhagavan has enabled me to spend most of my time thinking and talking and writing about his teachings. So that itself for me is the same as being in Tiruvannamalai. But if we have the opportunity to be in Tiruvannamalai, if Bhagavan gives us that opportunity, it is certainly beneficial. But we shouldn't feel just because if our prarabdha takes us far away, smarana Arunachalam, mere thought of Arunachala is sufficient. So, but Bhagavan sometimes talked about satsanga, but with satsanga, the physical satsanga is the crudest form of satsanga. Much more important is the mental satsanga. There's an incident. Once some lady who was living near the ashram, she used to visit the ashram every day. She and her husband, they visited the ashram every day. Once some relatives came from some other part of India, and because her relatives were there, she had to stay at home cooking for them and everything. After 3 days, when the relatives went away, she came to Bhagavan and said, "Oh, Bhagavan, for 3 days I wasn't able to come to you because I had to attend to my relatives." Bhagavan said, "It's better that you were there thinking of Bhagavan than that you were here thinking of your relatives." So though that's a very simple story, there's a deep meaning to that. But actually, the important satsanga is the satsanga by mind, not the satsanga by body. We can be sitting in the presence of Bhagavan with our mind wandering far away. That is not, being in Bhagavan's physical presence, of course, it's beneficial, but it's far more beneficial to be far away, but thinking with love of Bhagavan. And the best satsanga of all, Bhagavan used to say, is Atma-sanga. That is turning our attention within and trying to just be self-attentive. That is the best satsanga of all. So when Bhagavan has taught us that Arunachala is always shining in our heart as I, Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jagohail Arivairami Paramatman Aranachala Ramanan. He said so explicitly there. He's ever existing in our heart as Arivu, as that awareness eye, that is Bhagavan. So he's always in our heart. So if we want to be in his company, if we want to be in the presence of Arunachala, turn within. That is the best satsanga. That is the best Arunachala Sangha, Ramana Sangha.
Thanks. And so last question, you have addressed it, but related to the COVID-19 is, so the coronavirus is here and it came no matter what. What do we do? Do we sit quiet, actionless? And then that can be the last.
Being actionless means being egoless. Only when we don't rise as ego are we free of action. Otherwise, the body, speech, and mind will be made to act according to prarabdha. So now this situation has come with this coronavirus. Obviously, we have to act in an appropriate manner. We have to observe social distancing. We have to try and stay at home, wash our hands. We have to do whatever is appropriate according to our circumstances. But what we shouldn't be doing is worrying about it. What we should be, if we want to worry about something, worry about surrendering to Bhagavan. That is not the way. I don't mean that literally. I mean that should be our only concern, is surrendering ourselves to Bhagavan, being free of all cares and concerns. That should be our only concern. Leaving everything to him. As he said in that note to his mother, what is never going to happen is not going to happen, however much effort you make. What is going to happen is not going to stop, however much obstacle you try and make. So if it's our destiny, let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's our destiny to catch coronavirus, to become seriously ill and die. We can't escape it. It's going to happen anyway. So why should we worry about it? Of course, we take appropriate action. As Bhagavan used to say, dream hunger is satisfied by dream food. So in the dream, we have to act appropriate to the circumstances of the dream. We don't step out into a road in front of a fast-moving car. Like that, we take precautions appropriate to the circumstances of the dream we are living in. But that's outwardly we act like that, but inwardly we should be unconcerned with anything. We should be, Bhagavan is taking care. Bhagavan knows what is best. If it's best for us to live for another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, we will live for another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. If it's best for us to leave this body now, we'll leave this body now. For Bhagavan, this birth and death are not big things, because it's just a dream. Bhagavan says all this is just a dream. Each life is just a dream. So when one dream comes to an end, another dream starts. So we shouldn't be overly concerned about these things. That means we should act outwardly, we should act appropriately, but inwardly we should be free of cares and concerns, because Bhagavan is taking care of everything. This coronavirus couldn't have come without his consent. So if we have worries, we take this as an opportunity to, Bhagavan is giving us an opportunity to learn to surrender ourselves to him that little bit more.
Okay, Michael, Karthik has one more question.
No, Michael, it's not a question really. I wanted to see if Bhagavan gave us the teaching on deep sleep. Can you elaborate on his example of deep sleep and why he used to always talk to disciples or devotees about it?
Deep sleep, generally people take deep sleep to be a state of non-awareness. Even in some Advaitic texts, they take sleep to be a less than perfect state. According to Bhagavan, sleep is a state of pure awareness. In the absence of ego, what exists is only pure awareness. But since sleep is a state of pure awareness, since sleep is not actually any different from turiya, from our real state, why is it that sleep seems to us to be defective? The only problem with sleep is that we come out of it again. And having come out of it, then we can't clearly remember what we experienced, because what we experienced in this deep sleep was pure awareness. Since we are now not aware of that, since we are now aware of, we're not aware of awareness in its purity, because it's now mixed with adjuncts, we cannot clearly recollect what we experienced in sleep. We know we existed in sleep, and we were aware that we existed in sleep, but we don't have beyond that. What we actually experience in sleep is clouded from our view. We know we didn't experience any phenomena, but the nature of the awareness in sleep, we can't clearly grasp now. So as I say, the only defect with sleep is that we come out of it, whereas turiya, you never come out of it. Why do we come out of sleep? Because in order to experience turiya, the state of eternal sleep, ego needs to be destroyed. Ego can be destroyed only when it exists, and ego can be destroyed only by experiencing itself as pure awareness. As soon as it experiences itself as pure awareness, there's no such thing as ego. When we fall asleep, we don't fall asleep because of self-attentiveness. We fall asleep because we're too tired to continue projecting all these phenomena. So we fall asleep. When we fall asleep, we experience pure awareness. But we who experience pure awareness in sleep are the pure awareness. Ego is not there. So because ego disappears before the pure awareness appears, ego is not destroyed by it. That is why Bhagavan said, here and now in the waking or dream state, we need to try to experience the pure awareness that we experienced in sleep. How to experience that? What is the nature of pure awareness? Pure awareness means awareness that is aware of nothing other than itself. In other words, just awareness, not awareness of anything. In order to experience that, we need to cease being aware of anything other than ourselves. As Bhagavan says in Upadesha Undiyar, verse 16, Vele videngale vittu, leaving aside all external phenomena. That means all phenomena, everything other than ourselves. Manam tan oli uru ordale, mind knowing its own form of light, unmeyonichiyam, that is true awareness. It's very significant there. Bhagavan says, Manam tan oli uru ordale. Manam there means ego, the chit aspect of the mind, the awareness aspect of the mind, that which is aware, currently aware of other things, needs to try to be aware of itself alone. So it's when the mind is aware of its own form of light, it is thereby swallowed by it. That is, mind or ego is when it is aware of itself as pure awareness, it is thereby swallowed by it. So we need to, that's why Bhagavan said we need to experience the pure awareness of sleep here and now in the waking state. That is, as ego, before in sleep, ego subsides, therefore pure awareness shines forth. We need ego to subside as a result of pure awareness, of experiencing pure awareness. So it's a matter of cart and horse. In sleep, the cart goes first, so the horse escapes. In jnana, the horse goes first and is swallowed by the pure awareness.
Thanks. And Michael, if you can share some final words with us.
Where to begin? Tirumbiya handane dinamaha kankan teriumendraneya naranatila. In that one verse, Bhagavan summarized all his teachings, and he gave us a great assurance. If we do this simple practice of tirumbiyaham, turning within, dinam ahakankan, tanne dinam ahakankan, seeing oneself daily with the inner eye, that's the eye of attention, terium, it will be known. Bhagavan assured us. So all we have to do is to follow this very, very simple path, which by turning our attention within, we are both investigating ourselves and surrendering ourselves. That is all Bhagavan asks us to do. So simple.
Thank you. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Thank you so much.
Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramanaya, Mano Maranaya, Sadhguru used to say.
Namo Ramanaya, Mana Marunaya.
Namo Ramanaya, Mano Maranaya. Thank you.
Thank you.
God.
Beautiful.
Namo Ramanaya.
Thank you.
Mano Maranaya.
For those who don't
Maranaya.
Namo Ramanaya is for the death of mind.